Hello everybody and welcome to Omnipoke, the channel that brings you guys everything Pokemon. I'm Jack and today I've got another deck analysis for you guys, post trump card ban, and this deck, as you can see, features the one, the only Wailord EX. If you've been keeping up with US Nationals over this past weekend, you will have seen that Wailord EX managed to take second place in US Nationals. I believe it also dotted around in some other, I think it got a few top 64s ish, somewhere around there, but mainly it was Enrique Avila playing Wailord EX and Suicune, which came second at US Nationals this weekend, falling down to Jason Klaczynski's Toad, sort of straight Toad garb, old school Toad deck, which managed to win overall. But yeah, we wanted to give you a deck analysis on this deck. I'm only going to be doing an analysis. I'm not going to have a battle with it, just to spare you about 45 minutes of your time, because the matches with this deck are insanely long. If you want to see someone playing the deck, like I say, go and check out the stream on twitch.tv of the finals match between Jason and Enrique, and you can see how the deck works, but I'll still go through card by card, just to sort of give you the general strategy behind it and explain sort of the decisions that Enrique made. So yeah, as you can see, first off we have 4 Wailord EX, 250 HP, and this thing is a complete damage sponge. It sits in front of your opponent and says you need to deal 250 damage before you can take any prizes on this guy. There's not much else to say. The whole strategy is to wall with this guy, or sponge damage with this guy, and in some cases just wall with Suicune here, with this safeguard ability preventing all effective attacks, including damage done by your opponent's Pokemon EX. This can completely shut down games sometimes. If your opponent doesn't have a normal, a non-EX attacker, Suicune just wins games, especially if you don't bench enough prizes. In Wailords, if you only bench 2 Wailords, then they can only take 4 prizes, and at the end of the day, your opponent's going to deck out. The main strategy of the deck actually is to try and make your opponent run out of cards. Since Lysander's trump card has been banned, deck out strategies have sort of come back into the mix a little bit, and this deck sort of relies on trying to make your opponent run out of cards before you do, before they take all 6 of their prizes, and it's just a really sort of interesting way to go about the game. As you can see, there's no energy in here, so there's the 7 Pokemon, there's 4 Wailord and 3 Suicune, and then there are 53 trainers. I believe I counted earlier on, there's 27 supporters in this deck, so you can see how consistent you can be with this. Just being able to find the exact supporter you need at each time. There's all manner of disruptive supporters in the deck, all manner of healing supporters. There's just so much that this deck can do. Dowsing Machine is the A-spec of choice. Again, it sort of works as a VS Seeker, but it can get back Hard Charms or the Rough Seas, which is another really important card. Just to be able to sort of carry on with the disruption. It can also, like I say, get back a Max Potion. It's just a really versatile card. And considering you don't really need to search anything with computer search, you're not really, you don't have any energy, so there's no point in playing Scramble Switch whatsoever. The only other one that I could potentially see justified is Scoop Up Cyclone, which acts as another sort of damage reduction card, because you put a Pokemon back into your hand, thus removing all of the damage off of it. But I feel Dowsing Machine can sort of do that just as well, with a little bit more versatility, being able to get supporters and the stadiums and the items and the hard charms. It just means that you have access to 52 cards in your deck, or in the discard, and there's nothing really stopping the Dowsing Machine from getting exactly what you want. We've then got 3 Enhanced Hammer, again just another sort of trolley card. Discarding specials. Specials are such a huge part of the format at the moment. We've got Rayquaza using them, we've got Raichu using them, we've got Toad using them, we've got Metals sometimes using them. We've got things like Groudon and Donphan using Strong Energy. Special Energy are everywhere at the moment, and that's why Enhanced Hammer was such a good call. 3 of them means you're always going to hit them when you need them. You can happily maybe even discard 1 or 2 depending on the matchup. If you know you're only going to see 1 or 2 special energy in that game, you can quite happily discard one or two just and use them to get back another card with Dowser Machine and get exactly what you want. And yeah, it's just another really trolly card. I also think, this is Enrique's exact list, by the way, card for card. I believe he went for Enhanced Hammer over Crushing Hammer, or in my opinion, Enhanced Hammer was the better play than Crushing Hammer, because Crushing Hammer requires a flip, and whilst it can get rid of basic energy, we have ways of doing that with Team Flare Grunt, which discards an energy attached to your opponent's active Pokemon. So there are still ways of getting rid of the basic energy, and you're not going to always be needing a specific supporter per turn, so you can quite happily just drop a Team Flare Grunt when you want to get rid of that energy, which sort of covers the spot for Crushing Hammer, and means you don't have to use risk the coin flip as well. For Max Potion, just because you're running no energy, so this basically becomes fully heal one of your Pokemon for absolutely nothing. If you've done huge chunks to Wailord and you manage to find a Max Potion, you can just heal off all the damage, and Wailord's sitting at 250 HP again, basically saying, can you consistently do huge chunks of damage and take 6 prizes before I deck you out of cards. Sacred Ash is just a one-of in the deck. Basically to get back any of the Suicune or Wailord that you need, if perhaps you've prized one or you just can't find one, or you need some more cards of your own, because obviously you can deck out yourself relatively easily as well, because you're not really doing anything. So that might seem like you're often going to be able to use less cards than your opponent. Sometimes you will find with the deck you'll be running low on cards, but these 5 extra cards may just push you over the limit of how many cards you need to be able to secure the win. It may give you some more cards that you have over your opponent, and therefore make sure that you win the sort of running out of cards race, and your opponent unfortunately runs out of cards before you. So that's pretty much why Sacred Ash in here. It's the only other, I believe it's the only card that gets things back into the deck as well. Obviously with Ancient Origins we know there's going to be the similar card but for energy, but since there's no energy in here that wouldn't help either, so I believe Sacred Ash is the only real card that can do that. Startling Megaphone I believe was for the Garbodor. I can't see much use other than that, other than disruption. The main sort of use I see for it is stopping the Garbodor from getting a tool on it, to make sure this ability Safeguard on Suicune is online, and meaning that your opponent can't really get through the Suicunes at all. Because if the Garbodor has a tool on it, then the Suicune's ability is shut off, but with the Startling Megaphone you can then sort of get your ability back online and stop your opponent being able to hit your Suicunes for any damage again. Finally, trainer-wise, one of the last trainers is Trick Shovel. It's just a one-of, and this is just another sort of card to be able to get rid of one of your opponent's cards off the top of their deck, just to try and speed up your win strategy. There's only a one-of. I believe it was a last-minute inclusion on Enrique and his team's part, but don't quote me on that. I could be completely wrong, but I believe I heard it somewhere on the stream that Trick Shovel was a relatively late inclusion to the deck, and it's not required whatsoever, but it just helps with with sort of winning one turn earlier. You might be neck and neck with your opponent, but with one Trick Shovel left in the deck, you can sort of speed up that win by one turn and maybe even win the game because of it. I don't really feel it was a necessarily super important card, but it may have been clutch in one or two of his matches. And like I say, it just speeds it up a little bit quicker. Speeds up the strategy and makes it a little bit quicker, yeah. On to the huge supporter base count. Whilst as a trainer there are 4 VS Seeker, just for versatility, for getting any of your supporters back. As you can see, there's loads. So you can just get another of any of these supporters, just to be able to continually disrupt your opponent. We've then got 4 AZ. AZ again acts a lot like a Max Potion, because you're putting the Pokemon back into your hand. You're discarding all the cards off of it, but the only card you're ever going to have on any of these Pokemon is Hard Charm, and sometimes healing sort of 200 to 240 damage is completely worth sacrificing the hard charm for, especially when you can actually dowsing machine the hard charm back if you really need it. So AZ acts a lot like a max potion, and means you can consistently sort of stop your opponent being able to one-shot you, or even take big enough chunks out of you to be able to two-shot you. You can just sort of cost them 2 or 3 extra turns, which is a similar reason for running 4 Cassius as well. They do very similar things, but rather than putting it into your hand, you get to keep all the cards on the Pokemon, but you shuffle it into your deck. This is another way Enrique stopped himself decking out, along with the Sacred Ash. Enrique would, you can shuffle sort of one of your Pokemon back in, and make sure you've still got a card to draw next turn, and if it's got a hard charm on it, you've then got 2 cards. So again, it's another way you can sort of increase or make your side of the decking out race a little bit more favourable, because you can get more cards back into your deck, while your opponent's consistently taking cards and having to deal with huge numbers to try and knock out Wailord. And again, it's another healing card, which is really significant and sort of stops your opponent from taking prizes, in all fairness. We've then got 2 Hue. Hue is another really good card, and something that I think has never really been seen competitively before. But a lot of the time with this deck, your opponent will build up a big hand just because they don't want to be discarding it all, and they might be looking for an N or something. And if you drop a Hue at the right time, whether it just be on your opponent's sort of 7 or 8 card hand, or whether they've got a huge hand like a 10 or 11 card hand, your opponent has to discard until they've got 5 cards in hand, which can be really, really painful, especially if they're holding a lot of pieces that they need to be able to execute their strategy well. If you can Hue at the right time when you haven't really got another supporter to play, and you can see that your opponent's sort of got a big hand, probably got a few resources in there that they need, you can Hue and push your opponent back down to 5 cards, which is another sort of really good way to stop N being too important for your opponent, because if you put discard a lot of your opponent's cards, then they're going to have less going back into the deck, so they're going to be able to draw less, and at the end of the day, they're going to run out of cards quicker, because they're not going to be shuffling cards back into their deck, they're going to be discarding them instead. So yeah, the N count the Hue count, is at 2. I don't think it was. I don't think I saw it used too much, but I think it's a very situational card, and the card itself, in the right situation, can definitely do a lot of work against your opponent, because they're running out. That means they're going to run out of resources, and maybe discard cards that they don't really want to discard. We've got 2 Lysander, again, just another disruption card, another card that you can use on your opponent and say, well, you're hitting me with your active Pokemon, let's Lysander up something on the bench with a high retreat cost, and then make you have to pay retreat or find a way of retreating to be able to continually deal damage to my Wailords. And if you can't, then I'm going to get another turn where you're just going to be drawing more cards and not really progressing with your strategy, whereas you're going to be decking yourself out quicker. So yeah, another really good disruption card, and definitely a very useful card. I've already touched on N. There's 3 in the deck. It's not necessary to always be using them, but N works really well for you, because obviously you're taking no prizes, because Wailord or Suicune, neither of them are ever attacking. You're always going to get 6 card Ns, meaning that N is basically always going to do better for you than your opponent. As soon as your opponent starts taking prizes, you're going to end up having more cards than your opponent, and therefore having more options than your opponent, giving you a bit more versatility about what you can do, and what you can, how you can deal with your opponent's field, and ultimately how you can win. So yeah, N is definitely a really good card. Then there's 4 Fan Club. Fan Club is basically your way of getting Wailords and Suicunes out early. If you can get a turn 1 or 2 Fan Club, you can set up sort of all the Pokemon you need for that game. Whether if you're playing a heavy EX deck, you can just get Suicunes. If you're playing a deck that sort of does low damage but maybe locks you or something like that, like Seismitoad, you can get a Wailord or two as well, just because these Pokemon have huge HP, and Wailord in particular has huge HP, and it's a real struggle to be able to knock it out. And this is like the main Pokemon search for, this is the only Pokemon search really for your deck, which is why it's so important to have 4 of them, just so you don't, because there's only 7 basics, you can definitely get donked in the deck, despite Wailord having 250 HP. This just means that chance is less likely, because there's another 4 outs for you to be able to search for more Pokemon and get them onto your bench, and continue disrupting. Like I say, if your opponent, if you have to start with a Wailord, but you can see your opponent's only using EX attackers, you can find a couple of Suicune, let them take the 2 prizes on the Wailord, and then basically throw out the Suicune and tell them, if you can't deal with this Suicune, then I'm automatically going to win, because you can't take your 6 prizes, and I have more cards to be able to refresh my deck, and sort of not run out of cards before you do. So Pokemon Fan Club is such a crucial part of the deck to be able to find either of the Pokemon that you're going to need for your strategy in the matchup. The one Shauna in the deck is another card that sort of works like N. It refreshes your hand, but maybe you know your opponent's got a huge hand of, like, say 10 or 11, and they've only got 1 or 2 cards left. You're not going to want to end, because you're going to be ending them into having a bigger deck. But you still need maybe 1 or 2 cards, maybe a hard charm or something like that, to be able to carry on walling with Wailord. The one Shauna is just sort of versatility, and it means that you can sort of pseudo N yourself and give yourself a new hand of 5, whilst not disrupting your opponent and making sure they keep their large hand size, which is going to mean that you're potentially going to win the game a bit quicker, especially if you don't want them to be refilling their deck with like a large hand size, and if they've already taken a few prizes, because N's only going to benefit them at that stage. There are 3 Skylar. Skylar basically gets you sort of 5/6 of the deck. It can get you pretty much anything. It can get you whatever you need for the situation. It can get you a supporter for next turn. It can get you a trainer that you need, maybe an enhanced hammer to get rid of a special energy, or the starting megaphone to get rid of a tool like Spirit Link or or a tool on Garbodor to shut down Garbotoxin. Maybe even a max potion just to heal off. It can get either of the stadiums that we play, or the hard charm as well. It's just so versatile in the deck. Usually Skylar is too slow for decks because they need to constantly be drawing cards, but since this deck really doesn't need to draw much at all, Skylar can get you specific cards for specific situations, and lead to you stalling your opponent even more and helping you win the game overall, because you can get the exact card you need to stall your opponent as and when you need them, which is so crucial with Wailord, just to be able to hit all of the pieces that you need when you need them. We've then got, as I mentioned earlier, 14 Flare Grunt, which is in some ways a better Crushing Hammer, in some ways a worse Crushing Hammer, but in this deck it's definitely a better Crushing Hammer, because it means you're not relying on flips. Like I say, you don't always need to use, there's not always a specific supporter you need to use, and sometimes it's just better to be able to stop your opponent getting an energy by just discarding one. It may mean the difference between you getting knocked out next turn or you being able to survive an extra turn. And like I say, yeah, it's just a really good supporter. When you don't need to use a specific supporter, it's a good disruption supporter. There was 1 Zero-Sick in the deck. Really good against Toad, Garbodor, because you can get through the Toad lock and stop the Garbotoxin ability, which is really, really useful. That's pretty much one of the biggest reasons we use it. I suppose another reason could be you maybe need to. It's another energy disruption card, so it could be another card like that. But obviously we have a lot of energy disruption already in the Enhanced Hammer and the Team Flare Grunt, so maybe it's going to be used. Maybe you're going to be using it for tools a little bit more often. But yeah, it's definitely a key card to get through Garbotoxin whilst you're being trainer locked as well. We've then got 4 Rough Seas. This is basically Wailord's way of being able to last so long. Not only do you have 250 HP, but you're then healing 30 damage every turn, which means you have to, unless your opponent can one-shot you, you're going to be healing at least 30 damage with every attack they take, which can seriously slow them down, and it can turn sort of a 3-shot knockout into a 4-shot or maybe a 5-shot knockout. With the amount of HP Wailord has, just because you're always healing. You've also got Max Potion, and all of these other sort of technically healing cards. They're not ideal. They're not used. They don't heal specifically, but their effects cause you to be healed. So there's just so much healing in the deck to be able to keep this Wailord at full health and stop your opponent from taking any prizes whatsoever. There are 2 Silent Lab. Silent Lab stops a lot of your opponent's abilities. It is interesting that Silent Lab also shuts off Safeguard, but you're going to be looking for Rough Seas when you've got when you know you're going to be playing against a deck that you're going to be using Safeguard a lot against. But yeah, the 2 Silent Lab are definitely useful. They can shut off things like Shaman, Jirachi, Mew if you ever go against Night March, things like that. Just sort of abilities that are really useful for your opponent's strategy. It can shut them off and make it more difficult for your opponent to be able to deal with your 4 Wailord and be able to deal with them quick enough to not deck themselves out. I definitely think Rough Seas is a better stadium for the deck, but 4 Rough Seas and 2 Silent Lab works really well because you can get through some of these annoying abilities that your opponent has as well. And dropping a Silent Lab turn 1 if you don't have the Rough Seas is definitely a perfectly good option. In fact, it's probably better because your Rough Seas could get bounced straight away, whereas Silent Lab may stop your opponent from setting up using Shamans or Jirachis, things like that. Finally, there are 4 Hard Charm. Again, just another card that sort of increases Wailord's stopping power. You're doing 20 less damage and then healing for 30 every turn. All of a sudden, the Wailord becomes such a difficult Pokemon to knock out. It's pretty much impossible for you to be able to one-shot it anyway. And there are certain cards in the format that can do it, but there's not many cards in the format that can one-shot Wailord EX. And then as soon as you start doing having to take it out in multiple hits, you're then reducing your damage by 20 with Hard Charm, and having 30 healed off of the damage with Rough Seas, which can sort of it turns 100 damage into 50 damage a turn, which turns it from a 3 hit to a 5 hit, like I say. So with all of these sort of different tools and sort of pieces of the puzzle, you can turn Wailord into such a tank, just sponging up damage. Doing as little damage to you as your opponent's doing as little damage to you as possible. You're healing off lots, reducing lots, and then when you're like one turn away from being knocked out, you've got Max Potions, you've got AZs, you've got Cassius. There's all of these things that can help just survive even longer, deny your opponent prizes, and eventually deck your opponent out. But yeah, that's the strategy behind Wailord. Like I say, I'm not going to do a video on it. I'm not going to do a battle with the deck, just because I will be here for about 30 minutes just with one game, and I feel Enrique probably plays the deck a lot better than me. I haven't tested it too much. I've tested it a little bit with Joe, but I haven't tested the deck too much, and I don't feel confident in being able to play the deck for you guys without testing it enough. Maybe if you particularly wanted to see it, I could do a live stream one weekend or something, just messing around with Wailord and seeing what we can do. But there are definitely ways to counter Wailord. Wailord did really well this weekend because no one expected it whatsoever. A lot of people are actually considering taking a single Bunnelby from X and Y. Primal Clash, which basically stops your Wailord, the strategy of Wailord completely, based on what deck it's in. In things like metals, if they take one Bunnelby, it can completely shut down your strategy, and it becomes an auto loss, unfortunately, because you don't take prizes. So your only win strategy is being able to knock out, denying your opponent knocking out 6 prizes worth of cards and decking themselves out. So Wailord is definitely a deck that we may be seen over the next couple of weeks, but I think was sort of a one-hit wonder just because no one was really expecting it. But like I say, if you guys particularly want to see some battle videos, I can either do it as a video or a live stream one weekend. Just sort of chilling out, playing with some Wailord, answering your questions, anything like that. But yeah, that is Wailord, the surprise deck from Nationals that came second this year. Congratulations to it, Enrique. I think he really played the deck well and sort of surprised everyone with the deck, and is definitely a really cool concept overall. Just a couple of final notices. We are currently holding our Omnipoke Summer 2015 tournament. I'm going to leave the link to the video down in the description. We would love you guys to enter. Obviously, US Nationals was this weekend, so a lot of people weren't able to enter. But now US Nationals is over, hopefully you guys can hop into the tournament and hopefully win yourself some Roaring Skies packs. There's no chart and there's no cost to it whatsoever. You just need to be able to use Skype, and but I'll leave all of the sort of information in the description, or I'll leave a link to the video in the description. And then finally, we have also got our Omnipoke 600 subscriber giveaway. We're now on about 608 subscribers from when I recorded the subscriber giveaway video. But make sure you go and check out that video. You have until Friday, this Friday, which I believe is the 10th of July. So on the 10th of July, the video won't be going down, but I will change the title to Giveaway Has Been Closed. So make sure you get your sort of entries in for then. I'll leave a link to that video in the description as well, just to make sure you guys can see all of the videos that we're putting up and get involved with sort of the community-based videos that we've been putting up. And again, hopefully win yourself some free packs online. But yeah, bar that, thank you very much for watching, guys. I've been Jack from Omnipoke. That has been a Wailord EX, which somehow got second place at US Nationals this year. Again, final congrats to Enrique from both of us here at Omnipoke, and congratulations to Jason Klasinski for taking first place and basically winning the sort of the shadow of his career, the one that he hadn't quite won yet. He managed to win US Nationals this weekend, so congratulations to him. But yeah, there is nothing much else for me to say. Thank you very much for watching. I've been Jack from Omnipoke, and I hope to see you in another video, guys.